Welcome to When Football Began Again, the podcast that takes a nostalgic look at the Premier League era. Hello and welcome to episode 2 of When Football Began Again. Thank you for listening, and a very special welcome if you are back after listening to last week's pilot episode all about the 92-93 season and thought, I'll give this another go. I appreciate you. On today's show, we have got Ian McMillan in a new format we'll be doing throughout this series. It's called Deserted Island Matches. You may be familiar with the concept. I'm going to ask guests to tell me which games they would take on a deserted island with them. And it's a lovely chat with Ian. That's coming up very shortly. First, a little bit of light admin. In the first episode, we asked you to choose the greatest Premier League Albanian, and you did. There was a brilliant response to this. It was a landslide. 96% of the votes went to Lorik Cana, the former Sunderland defender. He blew Armando Broja out of the water. So, Lorik Cana is the first player who will go into our Premier League Hall of Fame, League of Nations. Lorik Cana, the greatest Albanian to ever ply his trade in the Premier League. A big thank you to everybody who's taken time out to recommend the show, to share some of the clips. Some lovely reviews have popped up as well. Really, really appreciate that. I have had one complaint email, I've got to be honest. I'm just teasing that. I'm going to let you know about that at the end of the show. So stay tuned after Ian's interview. But let's get into it. Ian McMillan, there is a very slight audio issue on the first minute of Ian's answer. We got that solved quite quickly, but I didn't want to cut it out. It was a lovely response that he gives, and I just thought I'd keep that in. So please do bear with for that first minute of Ian's first answer. But Ian McMillan, fantastic broadcaster, big Barnsley fan, just charming company to sit and chat football with. And he says some lovely words at the end about how much he enjoyed the chat. I loved the chat. I think you're going to enjoy it. Sit back, enjoy. Let's find out which matches Ian McMillan would take with him to a deserted island. Joining us today to tell us about their deserted island matches is poet, broadcaster, lifelong Barnsley fan, Ian McMillan. Ian, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. I've got to say, I'm not a lifelong Barnsley fan because my dad was a third Lanark fan. My dad was from Scotland, and he was one of the very few third Lanark fans. And so he kind of dismissed the idea of Barnsley as a team you might possibly want to watch, because why watch Barnsley when you can see third Lanark's results? Not that he ever went, but because he lived in Barnsley. But so he was always a third Lanark fan. And then also he ended up not being a football fan. He used to go fishing. In a sense, I was a kind of Barnsley fan, not all my life. You know, later on, my cousin Ronald from Chesterfield, in fact, used to take me, and then my kids took me. So I'm a lapsed third Lanark fan who became a Barnsley fan.
Can you take us back to that first time you went to Oakwell, and was it instant for you when you saw the Super Reds in action?
It wasn't, because my cousin Ronald, the aforementioned from Chesterfield, was a Chesterfield fan, and he says, I'll take you. Barnsley were playing Chesterfield. I'll take you. He said, I'll take you. So I said, all right. And my dad said, well, they're not third Lanark. I said, that's true. He said, do you sure you don't want to go fishing on the River Dern? No, it's all right, Dad. I'm going with Ronald. So we got the bus into Barnsley, me and our Ronald. Our Ronald was a big fella, big bloke. He had a big hat on, his firepower hat, his Chesterfield hat. He had a Chesterfield scarf. So I got my mum to knit me at rapid speed a Barnsley scarf. And she was quite a fast knitter, but not that fast. So it looked like I was wearing a kind of a doll's cravat. So I'm sat on the bus with this doll's cravat and this bloke, and it got a bit of ribbing, but not much. What I enjoyed about it was the liveness of it, you know, and the shoutiness of it, and the feeling that you're kind of a bit let off the leash. I always said to people for their first game, go to an evening match. You know, you go up the steps and the lights are on, and you think, blimey, I've come to some kind of epic encounter in an amphitheatre.
So now we're going to go to the first match that you're going to take to your deserted island. It's a Premier League game featuring Barnsley. There are just the 38 to choose from. Is there one in particular that sticks with you?
Well, I was going to say the first game when we played West Ham and lost 2-1. But sadly, I wasn't there because we booked this holiday cottage in a place called Copdock near Ipswich. And my wife insisted that we went. The lady at the cottage had baked us a cake with all our names on. The cake was like a red and white cake. And I thought, I don't want a cake. I want to be at the match. The match I will choose, it seems counterintuitive, but I will. It was the third match of the season because we lost to West Ham. We beat Crystal Palace 1-0. Redfern scored. And they were all going, this Premier League, it's not that hard. Next game, we played Chelsea. It was on the telly. And my eldest daughter, who's 40 now, she was sick before the game. I said, don't you want to come? She went, no, I'm just that excited. We were so excited. I've never been so excited before a match as that. You go into town on the bus, and there's people stood in the gardens waving to you, going, come on. And you get there, and we have a samba band, council samba band, the front town band, and they were playing, and they went, and they think, this is great. This is exactly what you want. In those days, as you know, there was no seating in the away stand, so all the Chelsea fans stood there. And then, bloke behind me, an eternal optimist called John, who comes down every week from Newcastle to watch the match, he goes, do you know, I think it'll be 0-0. And I go, do you know, I think it will. I think it'll be 0-0. And then, goodness gracious, I mean, as you know, we lost 6-0. Vialli scored 4. But then on the other hand, it seems a daft game to choose because you could choose games that we won, but just the sheer excitement of being there and thinking, this is what it's like in the Premier League. You know, we've got to play better than this. But at the same time, you know, watching amazing football, you know, we're gonna win 7-6 as we all sang ridiculously. And then, you know, you lost, and then this bloke behind me goes, it weren't 0-0. But then it didn't matter. At the end of that game, people were embracing each other, going, well, you know. And then the other game I should have chosen was that game against Liverpool, where we had 3 people sent off.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Gary Willard, this referee. Every so often, one of our team got sent off. So they sent off Chris Morgan for brushing against, very gently, Michael Owen. After 3 had been sent off, this bloke next to me, who never said a word. He goes, I'm going to get that referee. I'm going to get him. I'm going to get him. And he got up, big fella, about 25 stone. Jumped. I never seen him move. I always thought he never moved between games. Thought he was always there. He jumped up a wall, ran across to attack Gary Willard. And then Jan Aage Fjortoft, again a very slow player, ran faster than I've ever seen Jan Aage Fjortoft run before. Tackled this bloke. He collapsed. The ground shook. And then Gary Willard, in his infinite wisdom, the referee, took both teams off without telling the managers. So then we're going, well, what happens now? What happens next? They started again. We managed to score with 8 men. Christoph scored. And then we kept playing attacking football. McManaman scored. And came and celebrated in front of Barnsley fans. Mistake. It was like one of those moments when, you know, men land on the moon or Kennedy gets assassinated. You think, where was I when that happened? And as you're going down, you saw these conspiracy theories bubbling up. People going, well, that's it. They don't want us in Premier League. We're done. We'll never win another match. That's it. They were just, both those games were like games that, they weren't like dull 0-0 draws. They weren't like a game where you win 1-0. They were just apocalyptically exciting games. You thought, blimey, this is what sport is in a way, or what life is. It's just these things when things go tragically wrong. I can't stop laughing when I think about that game, because when you were there, you think, and the kids are going, what's happening, Dad? And I go, I've got no idea. And neither has anybody else. Oh,
and the contrast between those 2 matches, because they're great picks, but actually after that Chelsea game, and that's still being so fun in your memory, that excitement, because, you know, it was so exciting that
it was it was on Sky, of course, wasn't it? It was on Sky. Yeah,
the multimillionaires, these world superstars coming to Oakwell, but so that carnival atmosphere, did that remain still walking out the ground after a 6-0 defeat?
It did, because you go in this town that, as you know, has had such a kicking over the years. Here it is in the Premier League. Couldn't believe it. That game when we beat Bradford City, a bloke next to me, it happened twice. I wonder if it was the same fella. I often think about this. He kind of went to his knees and started shouting, "Me dad!" because his dad had taken him to games and couldn't take him anymore. And then, decades later, when we're at Wembley, in the final of the Johnson's Paint Trophy against Oxford, this bloke next to me went, "Hey up, Ian, I used to sit next to you," and I didn't recognise him. And he says, "Look, if we win, I might get a bit emotional." I said, "It's all right. We And then when we won, he did that Barnsley embrace where he hardly touches you, like pats your back. But then he did it again. He went down his knees going, "Me dad." He started banging floor. And I says, "Have we been?" Oh my God! And he's hitting the ground. "Me dad." Oh,
so the second game for your deserted island is a non-Premier League game featuring Barnsley. Now, obviously, there's lots more of those to choose from. A game that Barnsley played that wasn't in the top flight. What game would you take with you?
I keep choosing defeats. I shouldn't choose defeats. That game against Oxford at Wembley. We'd had that great season of pressing football. And you get down to Wembley. And the last time I'd been to Wembley with them, was when we lost in the semi-final of the FA Cup to Cardiff. And before that, it was in 2000 when we played Ipswich and lost 4-2. And so your memories of going to Wembley have always been tainted by that. And so me and my daughter and her husband and my grandson went down to Wembley to watch him play Oxford. People doing that, you only sing when you're rowing. You know, all these blokes, you only sing when you're rowing. Just the joy of the game. Adam Hamill scoring that amazing goal where he ran down there and you think he's never going to. He is, and he scored. But then the miraculous thing was he did exactly the same goal against Millwall. And you think, surely Millwall have watched the video. They know that when he comes down here, he's going to that. And they hadn't watched it. And he scored again. And he couldn't believe it. Oh, that was just one of those things where, you know, the joy of it. That's one of the things that you can't replicate with anything else in your life. Because you're surrounded by these blokes who start shouting, "Me dad," you know, you shout about your grandson. You got all these people that you know. "Hey up, Ian." As I was walking up to the ground, I saw this fella. He went, Ian, I know this. He says, I ain't got a ticket. I don't care. He says, "I'm not going to get in. I don't care." He says, I saw him afterwards and he was slumped. He was sat on a pavement somewhere in North London. Going, "I didn't get in. I don't care." And it was just that collective joy. And just doing it at Wembley was great. And then getting back on the train and it's full of Barnsley fans singing. That can feel intimidating. You know, we've all been on trains where it's been a bit intimidating. But that didn't feel like that. You know, it just felt great joy. Just a feeling of this team can do anything, you know. And then you get to the Premier League and then you get relegated again. And as I always say, you know, it's not, being a Barnsley fan is never dull. You know, some teams win all the time, some teams lose all the time. The season when we couldn't go, in the COVID season, we did so well. Then you think this is going to be great, and then we get relegated, and then at the moment we're doing all right. So that was a game that I will remember for a long time, that Oxford game.
Barnsley have spent more time in the second tier than any other team. It feels like their natural home. Obviously, as we currently record this, they are back in the third tier. But going back to 96, 97 in that unexpected promotion season, more people would have had Barnsley down for being relegated than promoted. What do you remember about that momentum and that moment where you thought, this could actually happen? Barnsley could be in the Premier League.
It was a game against Oldham, and it was when Martin Bullock did an amazing run. And that's when the "Just Like Watching Brazil" song began. People singing "Brazil, it's just like watching Brazil." And at that moment you thought, this might start to come together. We kept losing. We lost to QPR, we lost to Grimsby at home. It wasn't always the momentum. There was a great moment when Wolves, who were our nearest rivals, and Mark McGee had said some daft things about us, I think they were playing Reading away. And there was 7 or 8 minutes extra time, which was more unusual in those days. And so we're all out in the car park. And suddenly you heard that either Wolves had lost or they'd drawn, and it seemed to be helping us even more. So at that time you start thinking, there is this unstoppable momentum. People got dressed up as what they thought Brazilians looked like. There was a great picture in the Barnsley Chronicle of a bloke with a Mexican hat. A parrot, a plastic parrot on a swing. I've never fathomed that one. Plastic parrot on a swing. And a bottle of pop. He got a bottle of lemonade and he stuck the word tequila. And it was just this. So it was like this kind of I don't know, buffoonish joy. You kept winning. There was a game that was rescheduled, and we won that one. And then it felt like the momentum was unstoppable. But because we've been disappointed so many times before, you thought, well, is there such a thing as unstoppable momentum? Because before, the momentum's been stopped. But then when it got to that game against Bradford, you thought, well, we have to win them. We just have to win them. And it was such a horrible day weather-wise. It was rainy, it was misty, it was drizzly. It just don't feel like we're going to do anything. But then, of course, we had Wilkinson, we had the great Clint Marcel, you know, who came from Norway. We didn't know what he was an amazing player. One of those players that kind of bamboozled people because they didn't know what he was going to be like. We had Johnny Hendry running up and down with his great big barrel chest. I watched a video of that game recently, and you realise how many times Bradford hit the bar, just missed. They could have easily won that game. Then it would have been down to the last game at Oxford, which, of course, we lost 5-1 because they were all still drunk. But it was that moment when you thought the momentum is with us. And then you saw things on like Match of the Day and Sky, where they'd have pictures of pit head gear and blokes in flat caps. And you go, oh, here we go, here we go. They still do that. You know, there's one remaining bit of pit gear at Barnsley made. And quick, get a shot of that. Get some blokes in flat caps. There aren't any. Oh, well, sell them these flat caps. I can put them on. You know, it was that thing that we all recognise of that kind of metropolitan contempt for so-called small towns. You know, battling Barnsley. You know, sadly, all the three teams that went up went down, which was kind of a lesson about something. But it felt like the momentum was unstoppable / stoppable. That was the thing. You kept thinking, this is unstoppable, or is it? Oh dear.
The third game to take to Desert Island is a game that doesn't feature Barnsley. So is there a game from the Premier League era that you remember or has a personal meaning to you?
I remember a game. I'm not a Man United fan, and there was a weird time when Man United were kind of being sold to us as your second team, that everybody should follow Man United because they're great. Man United played Arsenal, and it's when Ryan Giggs scored a goal and took his shirt off and wheeled it round his head. And so then, as a kind of comedy thing, when I got home, I'd take my coat off and whirl it round my head. You know, but I'd be out and about. I'd go, hey, like that, whirl it round my head. So it became a kind of Dad's here again. Dad, hey, go here. You know, and in my head, I just scored this goal. In the kids and my wife's heads, they're going, what's he doing? The fuck. So it was that. I just remember it being kind of moment of joy. I think I've spoken a lot about joy. I like joy. Because I've always thought that with football, you should savour these tiny moments. And that felt like a moment where somebody had scored and whirling this thing around their head. I'm doing it now. Because when I go down, when my mother-in-law comes for her dinner today, Sunday dinner, I'm going to whirl my scarf around my head and see what she says. This desert island's going to be full of videos, isn't
it? We're going to send you the VHS player.
Oh, great, please.
So Barnsley's star striker of that Premier League season, and you mentioned him a little bit earlier, was Georgi Christoph, who came from Macedonia, made a few choice comments about Barnsley, and actually still to this day, quarter of a century on, he remains Barnsley's record signing. What do you remember about Georgie, and also, you know, Barnsley splashing out £1.5 million on this European striker?
We spent £1.5 million on a striker, and you're going, what? Chronicle, I've got it wrong again. It's £150,000. That's a good price for this. And what you also thought was, who is he? Who is this bloke? Who is this fella? You know, all kinds of rumours that we'd never actually seen him play, that Wilson had seen him on a video. That happened, apparently, you know, same with Lars Laser, the goalkeeper. Apparently, people say we'd never seen him play. I remember a lot of people had his name on the back, and that was it. And he was like a star striker. I don't think he ever fulfilled his promise. He never scored as many goals as we wanted him to. I know he almost scored when we were at the playoff final at Wembley in 2000. He almost scored against Ipswich, and the keeper did this astonishing save to keep him out. But he never seemed to score as many as we wanted him to. He always seemed a bit frail. He seemed a bit distracted. He seemed like he thought he was still on a video, to be honest with you. He thought, they bought me off a video, I'm still on one, and in a minute I'm going to score. And so you get people sitting around you going, we paid what, £1 million? And he did score some good goals, there's no doubt. And when you got these players in the Premier League, there was Eric Tinkler. My daughter had Eric Tinkler name on her back. You thought, he's great playing the World Cup. He played for Kaiser Chiefs. You know, he's going to be great. We got that fella, Ten Heuvel. We got him and all. I think, oh, he'll be good. Ten Heuvel, he'll be great. I think we just like the fact we'd never heard of him. But they came from Europe, so they got to be good. They came from South Africa. He played for Kaiser Chiefs. Bob's going, I've got all their albums. No, they weren't around. I liked Tinkley. You know, he worked hard. Christoph always seemed a bit... It was like he was still having to have the actual atmosphere of the game translated to him. We knew that his English improved and all that, but somehow, I don't know what it was. Some people loved him, and there's a couple of people still at the match. I see one occasionally who's got the word Christoph on his back. We've paid all this money. You know, Barnsley people want value for money. So at 1.5 million, he should have scored 1.5 million goals. You know, he should have then swept up. And at the end of the game, you know, made people cups of tea, brought us all individually cups of tea in the stand. He said something that was lost in translation about Barnsley women, you know. But for a while, there was a takeaway that was called, I think it was called Christoph's. There was somewhere called Christoph's. There was a Brazil takeaway somewhere, I remember. Those things from that season still hung on for a while.
The culture of that Premier League season kind of leaking into the wider town. That's fantastic. Yeah. The fourth match we want you to choose for your deserted island is a European night that you'd relive again and again. Does anything come to mind?
Again, I'm not a big fan of European football. I thought hard about this. I was on holiday in Edinburgh with my wife and kids. And it was one of those games that taught you that you've got to keep your eye on the game. We're in this hotel room in Edinburgh. I think it was raining, so we thought we'd watch the match. So watching the match a bit. Then I went out and got a cup of tea, and I came back and somebody had scored. And the kids would say, you missed this, you missed that. I go out again and get another cup of tea. And somebody scored again, and Liverpool losing, then they're winning, and then they kept losing and winning. I always use that as a metaphor for you've got to keep your eyes on stuff. You've got to keep watching, because I get going out. So then I said, right, I'm going to sit and watch this game. So I sit and watch the game. Nothing happens for ages. And it became a metaphor for saying to me in my life, you've got to watch stuff. It happens all the time to me at Oakwell. Because I'm a bloke who's 66, I can't have one cup of tea without needing to go to the toilet. So you have a cup of tea, you go downstairs, you hear them standing up. Yes! Oh, you've missed it. You've missed another man. What? And then they're going, Ian, go down to toilet again. Go down again, kid. It was a big European match. Liverpool ended up winning against the odds, as far as I remember. But what I remember most is like me as some kind of ship in the night. Like going, right, I'm just off to deliver provisions to this far-flung coast. What, they've scored again? Right, I'm just over here. What, they've scored again? Thinking about it, that would have been pre the days when you could watch everything on your phone. I'm dreaming of the day when Barnsley get to Europe. It'll probably be in some kind of cup that they invent for teams in League One. And then you'll end up playing somewhere that you've never heard of, which would be fine, you know.
I think the match you're describing, would it be Liverpool 5, Alaves 4? There was like a UEFA Cup final. Was that the one?
That was it.
Yeah?
That was it. So you imagine how many cups of tea I had. They had to go for a wee, miss another goal.
Coming back to Barnsley, alongside that Premier League campaign, they had a really decent run in the FA Cup.
Yes.
2 very, very famous games against Manchester United. Can you remember those? And has Scott Jones ever had to buy a pint in Barnsley ever again?
Scott Jones has never had to buy a pint in Barnsley ever again. At the time, I was Yorkshire Television's investigative poet, so I had to make things for Yorkshire Telly. That first game, when we drew, I was actually filming at Old Trafford. So my wife took the kids on the supporters coach. We drew. We should have got a penalty, but we didn't. Come back to Oakwell. It was one of those games where hope starts to beat expectation. So the expectation is, well, Man United have come back. They've beaten us 7-1 in the league earlier in the season. They're going to win. They're going to beat us. But we'll have a good night out. They'd put their big team out. You know, Beckham played. The Nevilles played. But then we scored. Johnny Hendry scored this amazingly offside goal, didn't he? He scored the goal, then he went offside. But it wasn't offside. We won. Well, and then they scored. But then, as you said, Scott Jones, man with an enormous head. Massive head. Nice bloke, still knocks about. I think he still works in sports development in Barnsley. He wouldn't deny himself. He's got a big head. He put it to full use. He ran through, bang. He scored. Bloke behind me smacked me around the head. He does that. I don't know why. He does that when we score. Get out! What? It's strange. Then he says to me, You'll not write a poem about this, you'll write a sonnet. I said, yes, I will. You think, well, miracles can't happen twice. He can't get his big head on it again. And he did. It was amazing. He did it again with his big head. And he kind of went through a bash, scored again. And it was one of the most astonishing nights I've ever been at. You know, a night game, so it's more exciting. Then we had that game where we beat Chelsea. And, of course, earlier in the run, we'd beaten Spurs in that same run. Because I remember a chap in the Spurs end was holding up, taunting us with a homemade silverfoil FA Cup. He'd made the silverfoil FA Cup. He'd stuck silverfoil over a bit of cardboard. You know, he'd come on train. Oh, shall I got my silverfoil FA Cup? And he's holding up this silverfoil FA Cup. And then, of course, we beat him. And I remember one of my vivid memories is him throwing his silverfoil FA Cup to the ground in disgust like that. And you think, yes. Then, of course, we got Man U in next round. That's one of those things where you think anything is possible in football. That's the thing. I say this a lot. I say it a lot when I'm talking about football, that you can guess the end of a play. You can guess the end of a film. You can never guess the end of a football match. You think you're going to beat them, they beat you. You think they're going to beat you, you beat them. And that's what happened to that Man U game. All these glamorous people in the ground. You know, there's a rumour that Posh Spice is going to be seen at corner pin. You know, having a pint, having a cocktail in corner pin. I'll tell you what was great as well, was there's all these people, a bit like my son-in-law, Barnsley people who support Man United in the away end, people who worked with them sitting near me taunting them. That was great as well. You know, that was an amazing game. My heart's beating faster just talking about it. You know, my kids were all there. I sat, apart from my youngest, it was a bit late for him, but my kids were all there, and it was just the most amazing thing. And to see Barnsley men who aren't normally given to great outbursts of emotion, embracing each other, shouting, clapping each other around the back. You get that thing where people pretend they were there who weren't. You know, people who weren't born. I were there. What? You weren't born? You know, it's like when Barnsley play Nottingham Forest, and people just turn up to shout "scab" at them, and you'll get people who weren't born in the strike shouting "scab, scab." You go. You weren't. The best thing I ever saw at one of those games was a bloke turned up dressed as a miner. He had a miner's helmet on. He had a miner's lamp. He had all these NUM stickers on his hat, his helmet. Just before the game, he walked on the pitch. He walked on the pitch. So the coppers, in like a reconstruction in 1984, arrested him and took him up. But yes, that was a great game. Barnsley beating Man United.
So the fifth and final match to take with you to your deserted island is an international match that you take with you to watch forever. What comes to mind?
I did enjoy when the England women won the cup recently, but I was thinking about, it was the first game when I was meant to be working somewhere, and like a lot of people, I sneaked home to watch it because it was at dinner time, weren't it? And I remember Desmond Lynham on the telly pointing at the screen and going, "You should be at work." And you think, I should. And everybody around you should have been at work. And it was one of those times when, I think it was Euro 96, or was it the World Cup after? Anyway, when football had kind of, partly through Euro 96, had been reclaimed. You know, that before that, as we know, there was terrible violence at a lot of games and all that. But suddenly, from Euro 96, it felt like it's been reclaimed. And just me sat on my settee downstairs in this house, watching this match. Can't even remember who we played, but just that feeling of being a bit of an outlaw. And what I do remember is we scored, and I could hear John across the street coming out in his garden and going, "Yes." I thought, he should be at work and all. He should be at work. Yeah. And it was this idea that schools gave the kids permission to watch the match, and workplaces emptied, you know, and people were watching it in offices on tellies. This is what sport could be, you know. It could be a great bringer together of people. That's it. That's when it's at its best, isn't it, sport? That's why we're talking today, because it can bring people together in excitement and joy and unhappiness. You know, Frank Skinner says he's never been as happy and as unhappy as he has when he's watching West Brom. And it's the same for me. I get so happy watching Barnsley, and I get so unhappy at times. I don't think anything else does that, you know, and brings people together. So I just remember that game, although I'm standing like a fool because I can't remember who we played. But I just remember Desmond Lynham saying, "You should be at work." And he sat at home going, "I should."
Okay, going back to Barnsley. So there were some heavy defeats in there, but they remained in the survival hunt right up to those last couple of games. How do you think the following 25 years might have played out had Barnsley pulled off the impossible and remained in the Premier League? Would they be a European superpower by now?
Well, you often think about that. I often think about that what if. You often think, what if we'd stayed up? Because the team that I compare us to is Burnley, similar sized town. We could have been in the Premier League for years. We could have been a European power. And a lot of people, a lot of Barnsley fans talk about that what if. What if we'd managed to stay up? What if Gary Willard hadn't sent them 3 off? What if we hadn't played such kind of naive attacking football? We played such a lot of naive attacking football when we should have maybe defended better. And then you think, all right, so Barnsley would have stayed up. Would have stayed up that year. Maybe somebody like, because Spurs were way down there, Everton weren't very good, they might have gone. We'd have started building, and I think we'd have been less patronised. We wouldn't always be in the last game on Match of the Day. They might not have shown pictures of pithead gear. And gradually then Barnsley would have become, they said, yeah, the teams in the offing this year, perhaps for a mid-table place, you got teams like Man City, you got teams like Barnsley, and they'd just say it, and it would just be like a normal thing. And then the town would have benefited so much. Whenever we're in the Championship, you get more away fans. If you're in the Premier League, you get more away fans. Then you have this fantasy. Yeah, we stayed in the Premier League. We got to Europe. We did what Leicester did. You win the Premier League. And then reality hits you. And you think, well, that didn't happen. And we've had a kind of decline since then. But then you think, it might have done. That's the phrase that, as football fans, we repeat endlessly, isn't it? It might happen. This might happen. At this moment, when we're 5th in the table in League One, we're all thinking, well, we'll get promoted this year, and then we'll get promoted, and then we'll be back in Premiership, and then ain't that why we do this? You think it might have happened. So yes, I think a what if might have been that we stayed up and we gradually became an accepted Premier League side who just went on and to bigger and better things, and then maybe one year in a kind of Leicester-style blip won the Premier League. I think that now we've said it, Carl. Now we've said it. It's going to happen. The power of language, the power of prophecy. We'll play this back in a couple of years and go, it was right that Ian McMillan, him and Carl, they knew what was going to happen.
They called it right here.
Yeah, they did.
So you're on your deserted island. You've got your 5 matches. We're going to give you the opportunity to choose a Premier League player, either current or ex-Premier League player, who you would choose to attempt a rescue mission. But do be warned, because if this rescue mission fails, you have got to see out your days on the island with this player. Who would you choose?
And is this a Barnsley player or any Premier League player?
It can be a Barnsley player. It can be any player from the Premier League history. It's up to you.
Just because he was an interesting chap intellectually and he's a Barnsley player, I think I would choose Jan Åge Fjortoft. Partly because of that odd skill he showed when he ran and tackled that bloke who was going to attack Gary Willard. Partly because when I've interviewed him a couple of times, he seemed like a man with a kind of hinterland, an intellectual hinterland. He's felt like a fella that wouldn't just want to talk about football when he's stuck on this desert island. And also, what I was always impressed by, he had massive, broad shoulders. So I think he'd say, after about 3 months on this desert island, when we talked about philosophy and poetry and art, he'd go, do you know, Ian, I think, because I've got these broad shoulders, I could swim you, we could swim away. And I go, you think so, Jan Åge? And he'd go, yeah, I think we could, look at my shoulders. It's got like swimmer's shoulders. You go, all right, Jan Åge, point of information, I can't swim. And he'd go, it don't matter, look at these shoulders. So then, me and Jan Åge, looking by now emaciated, but knowing so much about philosophy and art, he'd then trust me, he'd say, Ian, trust me. And I'd say, I trust you, Jan Åge, and your massive shoulders. And I'd get on his back, and he'd start swimming, because he'd big shoulders. And I'd be on his back, and he'd be like a boat, and I'd be on his back, and I'd be going, remember that that you ran on the pitch and tackled that bloke? And he'd go, Ian, don't distract me. Don't distract me. I'm swimming. Then ahead of us, we'd see, like some kind of miracle, one of those massive cruise ships, big cruise ships. And we go, oh, there's a cruise ship there, Ian, and we get on the cruise ship. There'd be joy because I've been rescued, but then they go, oh, Yanagi, you might want to go down and watch this talk. There's a talk, one of them cruise ship talks. And in the cruise ship, in one of these theatres, there's Danny Wilson doing a talk about our year in the Premier League. And I go, please welcome Yanagi Fjortoft. And Yanagi dripping wet, covered in lard, because that helps him to swim with his massive shoulders. That's yes, I think I'd choose Yanagi.
I mean, let's just hope that Gary Willard and family aren't on a cruise.
Oh, that'd be great. They were on a cruise. And he'd go, no, it never happened like that.
We've covered this a little bit, that Barnsley have come close to getting back to the top flight. So there was that fateful game against Ipswich under Dave Bassett, and then very recently in the COVID season. Do you keep that genuine hope? Does that hope always burn that Barnsley will get back there?
Partly it does. I mean, I like the Championship, to be honest with you. I think the Championship is a great league. I don't like the fact that the Premiership just feels a bit like just some money bags playing some other money bags. And obviously the standard is very high, but I would like to be in the Championship. I'd like to be in the Championship and be a set team in the Championship that was there for a long time. And then maybe every now and then you get in the Premiership. That'd be nice, and you would get all that money. Suddenly being upgraded. Like, I've gone to Travelodge and I've been upgraded. I mean, it's 5-star hotel. But actually, all you need is a bed and a telly. And it's... So I think I'd like to go back there every now and then just to look round. Like you'd like to visit somewhere, have a look round. And it would just be... I think it'd be about money. But I would like to get in the Championship. So I think, yeah, I do harbour a belief that we'll be in the Championship for years. And I also harbour this kind of sub-belief under that every now and then we'll pop our heads over the parapet and go to the Premier League and wave and then maybe drop down again. Because a lot of teams do that. They go up and down. You think about Norwich or somebody else. I think we could be the new Norwich. That'd be all right, I think. Yeah.
And we're going to give you the opportunity to strike a Barnsley game from the records forevermore. So this could be a game you'd rather forget for any personal reasons, a match that may have changed the course of history, or just something obscure. Is there a match that you would place, a Barnsley game that you'd place in Room 101?
There are quite a few, aren't there? Because you think about the dull games where not much happened. But the game I would place in there it was a Premiership game when we played Sheffield Wednesday at Hillsborough. They scored first, then we scored. Then they won. I just felt such despair. It was one of the times when you think, we're never going to win another game. And I just remember the deflated feeling in the away stand. Partly because you can't see a thing in the away stand at Hillsborough because of all the pillars. You don't know what's happening. You may as well listen to it on the radio. But just the deflate. I remember walking back, because often there's a bit of a banter or shouting. But I just remember in this group of people I was with, including my kids, just wandering off and going, it's like you wander off like half-deflated balloons. I would certainly strike that one. And the other one was, in that promotion season, we played Oxford United in an evening match. And it was one of the dullest games I have ever seen in my life. In fact, no, there is a duller one. There's a duller one. We played Bury away when Neil Warnock was the manager of Bury. And he did the post-match interview wearing a Sheffield United tie. So I think this happened. And I've never been to such a dull game. We sat there. There was a bloke. There was very few fans there, I think, from either side. I do remember there was a bloke behind the Bury goals, a Bury fan, reading the paper. And he read the paper all the way through the game because the paper was more interesting than the game. And my kids are going, Dad, can we go home? I mean, we can't go home because we're on the supporters coach. And we can't go till the end of the game. And you sat there. Oh, gosh. That was a terrible game. Then we got lost walking out of the game. And we had to walk past the wonderfully named Bury Cemetery. I remember that. We're going, where's the bus? Oh, there's the Bury Cemetery. That's nominative determinism for your kids. Eventually found the bus. So that I would strike those three. The glumness of the Sheffield Wednesday game. The dullness of the dull 0-0 draw against Oxford United, which was even capped by the dullness of the Bury game, where a bloke was reading the paper all the way through.
It's a good match when you're reading the classifieds. Just the final thing, which Premier League goal would you relive forever? And again, it can be a famous Premier League goal, it can be a Barnsley goal. Is there one that you would watch over and over?
there are a number of goals. I mean, bearing in mind that I often miss them because I'm looking the wrong way. And there are a few Barnsley goals. There were goals like some of John Hendry's goals. But when I was thinking about this, there was that goal that David Beckham scored from the halfway line. And it's been done a few times since. But at the time, it was one of those that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Because you go, oh, well, what a daft thing to do. Kicking it from there, the dope. And then it all happens in slow motion. You go, and you're going, oh, it might get quite close. It might. And then in kind of time slows down to absolute nothing. And then it goes in. And you think, blimey, it was like, it's one of those things where time slows down, the laws of physics are defied, and it kind of sets a benchmark, you think, and then you do see, we've all seen other players trying it and not managing, and occasionally managing it, but you see them try it, and it goes and the keeper gets to it easily, or it flies into the stand. But at that moment you think, oh yeah, anything's possible. That's why I like it, I suppose, because it tells you that anything's possible. Was just a thing of beauty, I suppose. Yeah.
Well, Ian, that pretty much brings to an end. It's been an absolute pleasure talking.
It's been great. I tell you what, it's so good talking about those times, isn't it? Partly because I was a young man then, and you thought at the time that, as I said just a minute ago, anything's possible. And just talking about it, you think, God, what time? And every football fan in the world can talk about stuff like this, can't they? And I do a lot of work with people who've got memory loss, and they can still remember who were played in 1958 and what they scored and what the crowd was. Somehow, football can imprint itself in our memory in a way like nothing else can. And just talking about it, it's just so full of joy. So I've really enjoyed this. I really have. I'm gonna whirl my scarf around me.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure. And you are a wonderful broadcaster on all sorts of different things. Where can people hear you at the moment?
Well, at the moment, I have a show on Radio 3 called The Verb, which is on every Friday night at 10 o'clock and also available on BBC Sounds. And it's just a programme about poetry and writing and storytelling. And it just means that every week I get sent a dozen books, which I've got to read in great depth because it's Radio 3 and you have to ask them really searching questions. So catch me there.
Fantastic. And you mentioned poetry, which is obviously something you are wonderfully known for. Do you have a poem about Barnsley's Premier League season you might be able to share with us?
I do. It's a very short poem, but it has a story attached to it because we had this player called Lars Lees, who was this goalkeeper. And so I wrote this poem that I wanted people to take up as a chant. And it went, Lars Lees, listen please, we think you're very good. Lars Lees, tall as the trees that grow in Wunwell Wood. And I thought, that's great. Lars Lees, listen please, we think you're very good. Lars Lees, tall as the trees that grow in Wunwell Wood. And then, in some horrible poetic humiliation, I found out that his name was actually pronounced Lars Laser. So you can't say Lars Laser, tall as the trees. But then I did hear some blokes behind me shouting it, ironically, going, Lars Laser, tall as the trees. And I thought, pride comes before a fall. But I still think Lars Lees, tall as the trees that grow in Wunwell Wood. Lars Lees, listen please, we think you're very good. Or the other way around. It's a nice poem, I think. One of my best.
Well, what a fantastic place to end it. Ian McMillan, thank you so much indeed.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So that was Ian McMillan. What a wonderful man. Lovely, lovely stories. I really enjoyed speaking to him. Just a lovely, lovely chat. That episode was recorded before the very sad recent passing of Gianluca Vialli, just in case it seemed odd that we didn't reference it. That one of his most iconic performances, I think, at Oakwell, when he scored 4 goals for Chelsea. Really, really fantastic performance, and quite fitting that Ian, despite it being a defeat for Barnsley, would want to take that with him, because what a performance that was from Gianluca Vialli, the late Gianluca Vialli. I realised in the edit that we didn't actually name the England game that Ian wanted to take with him. That was, of course, England versus Tunisia, the opening game of World Cup 1998, and that famous introduction from Des Lynam on the BBC. And the game that he chose, Manchester United versus Arsenal, I didn't have the heart to be a stickler for the rules about it being an FA Cup game. A fantastic game of football, of course, and led to some great imagery, I think, for anyone to think of Ian whipping his coat off at the door and whirling it round his head. Now, at the beginning of the show, I did mention that I have had a complaint email. I tease a little bit. It was an interesting little bit of feedback from 1992-93 that I'm going to share with you now. Hello. I listened to the first show on 1992-93 from New Zealand and enjoyed it very much. As a QPR fan, I do have one small observation. The Super R's were London's top team in 1993, with the goals of Les Ferdinand firing us into the top 5 above our supposedly more illustrious capital neighbours. Sky Sports Premier League episode is infamous among Rangers fans for barely featuring us at all despite this, and so your walkthrough of the episode also missed us out. Other than that, an excellent listen, and I fancy my chances at Play Your Apps Right. Regards from the Southern Hemisphere, Tom, the QPR fan. Tom, thank you for getting in touch. I really appreciate it, and I apologise. I have moved away from that format a little bit. The next one that we're doing at 93-94, we won't follow Premier League years quite so faithfully. I think that could be a little bit of an issue of Sky's editorial control. We are going to be a little bit more neutral than that. So my apologies. In a few weeks' time, we will cover QPR in intimate detail. Speaking of which, it is the first episode next week of our countdown of the top 50 Premier League teams on the all-time Premier League table. In 50th place, it is Swindon Town. And we are going to have a brilliant chat, a deep dive into the seasons that surround their solitary season in the top flight. Play Your Apps Right. We'll be playing once again. We'll be putting another Premier League footballer into the Premier League of Nations. So tune in next week for 50th place, Swindon Town, and the beginning of the top 50 countdown. Future episodes as well. If you enjoyed Ian's episode, if you are here because you're a Barnsley fan, Barnsley are coming up 49th all-time Premier League top table. That is a few weeks away from now, so please make sure you hit subscribe and make sure that you are in for that one. And we also have an interview with Danny Wilson talking about his time at Barnsley, at Sheffield Wednesday. That is coming up in a few weeks' time as well. All that's left to say is thank you so much for listening to the show, for supporting the show by giving it a share or a review. I really, really appreciate it. We've had a lovely reaction to the first episode last week. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Come back again next week. And in the meantime, find us on social media, subscribe, share. I really, really appreciate it. Until next time, thank you very much for listening to the show. Thanks for listening to When Football Began Again. Join us again next time for another slice of Premier League nostalgia. In the meantime, subscribe, leave us a 5-star review, find us on socials, and spread the word with all your Premier League loving mates.